They probably are thinking like, what are these guys talking about? I need to get somebody on this.
Yeah.
If they haven't already.
Yeah. Data is power, right?
Like
honestly, everything that you collect on your customers, everything you collect about your daily processes, all your transactions are potential data mines, right? Like things that you can get information from to figure out your next steps. And over the years, I've only been touching on this field for the last couple of years.
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders. Take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment and feel the beat within. In a few seconds, you just jumped from your head to your heart, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life. And today's episode, I'm your host, Nico Van de Venne, confidant to successful CEO founders and entrepreneurs striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Welcome to the Everlasting Podcast with our next guest, Nick Koziol, the human puzzle architect, empowering individuals to develop their skills, create their personal brand, and develop opportunities to have a career you love. And the host of the That Sounds Terrific podcast, co-host of That Sounds Terrifying podcast. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show. Now, that's an intro.
Yeah, that's an intro. Like, you got to get it all out. It's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
So I've never had to read that all off about myself. So, but thank you for bringing me on your show.
I'm already enjoying it. You've had some interesting. The road towards the show today was a bit challenging, but you got there. You got the power back.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, it's always fun when you come into work and the power's out, and then you got to figure out where you're going to be. So so
absolutely. So, human puzzle architect.
Yeah,
let's go into that one. Let's
go right into that. Well, a lot of these things I don't come up with myself. It's the other people will sort of coin the phrase or say something, and I'm like, oh, that's good. I got to put that down. And the latest one is in my improv group. They called me the Swiss Army Nick, like a Swiss Army knife. And I'm like, because they call me a utility player in that group, and that I can just kind of go into any scene, which is a great compliment. And that's where the human puzzle architect came from. A contact of mine said, I have all these different meetings with people for my job and for the podcast and all these things. So I have a pretty big network. And it always seems that, after, I connect with one person, the next person I connect with, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to connect you with Nico. I mean, he is amazing. He's doing all the things you're doing. You guys would complement each other really well. So the human puzzle architect came from that. A friend of mine said, you just always seem to have that missing puzzle piece that you're just going to connect right in and build this really great experience or, network of connections for people. So that's where that came from.
That's a nice one. Yeah. So, okay, you're an architect.
I'm not an architect, not at all. My full-time job actually is with this Center of Excellence in Data Science. So I do business engagement and communications for this center that is funded through New York State and housed at the University of Rochester. So all of what I do is try to connect companies with researchers and advanced data science. And look for ways to impact the New York State in a positive way as far as the economy goes, new jobs, cost savings, new products, and advance the field of data science. So that's my full-time gig. Not an architect, but the architect maybe of a network, because a lot of what I do is just connecting people. And that's where, the podcasting and career support things that I've done in the past have really come into play and been helpful. So
that's really not an architect.
No,
as in a building architect.
No,
it kind of explains where it comes from as well. But
I have built a treehouse that I designed myself, and it's still standing up there after 3 or 4 years. So I guess I am.
Maybe a missed career opportunity right there.
Perhaps. They do have that in the States, the little house builders and the tree house builders that they've made a huge, business out of, but that's not me.
Yeah, it's something that's kind of popping up over here as well, and some of these tree houses are like they're half mansions. It's amazing
They're probably all better than my
windows and
house.
yeah, chimney and I think it's like you open up the door like
Yeah,
opening up
it's
a
like Star
different
Trek,
world.
right?
Yes, indeed, indeed.
Yeah, there's actually there's a camp that I featured on That Sounds Terrific called Cradle Beach, and they offer respite services and camp experience for kids. And they have a tree house that's fully accessible, so you can actually ride up a ramp and get in there if you have a wheelchair, and it's a really cool and overlooks the Lake Erie, so the beach there. So yeah, tree houses are fun.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, it's kind of astonishing. I my kids wanted a tree house as well. We don't have a tree in the garden, so they're kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So we just installed one of those little buildings that just a little bit higher, and that was it. I was the one puzzling it together, and
Mhm.
after a couple of years, had to mentally destroy it because it was just not used anymore. When they
Yeah.
grow up. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes these tree houses are like a temporary thing for a lot of locations, but if you're talking about a camp like that, I think those it brings a lot of beautiful memories, so that's very important. So when you talk about communication and data, um, it's it's inevitable to bring up the two word the two syllables that are so hyping around, and I even don't want to mention it because I don't want to trigger
I
anything, but
know. I think I know what it is.
yeah, do you um so what's your view on that in what you're doing today? Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's super.
Um, so there isn't really a place where data isn't touching, right? So like everything seems to collect data. Like you walk in a supermarket and you've got cameras on you, and nowadays they're probably using object recognition to the point where like you pick up like a mouse off the shelf or whatever, and that camera records that. So from that, they're finding ways now to like identify what you picked up, how long you looked at it, how quickly you put it back down. And then you might find yourself getting a coupon for that item before you leave the store, right? So like all of those things in data science, it's all connected. Data is connected to pretty much every industry. So when I work with the Center of Excellence and I work with our Gurion Institute for Data Science, we're always looking for unique opportunities for our students and our researchers to kind of engage in. And so everything that you could possibly think of, we probably have done some sort of project with. So we had a wildlife rescue rehabilitator who was releasing red-tailed hawks with radio tags, do a project with us, studying the release and where the hawks went, what they did. So wildlife, agriculture. We have a cow sensor that we're working with a company, and we've worked with NASA. We've worked with large corporations around payroll and identifying different job titles and all sorts of different things. So that those mystery letters, I think you want to talk about AI is a part of that, right?
You're such a smart man.
Right. Well, I
Indeed.
think you set me up and it was a nice set, and then I can spike it down. But like all that kind of connects to like how can this be here in education we're kind of using it as a tool, right? When you
Mhm.
think like there's even I'm getting my EDD, and our Warner school is really not sure what to think of AI and what to think of ChatGPT for and all those different things. Like how are we going to allow students in the future to use these things? And like my personal view, and part of probably what my dissertation is going to be on is just that, that it is a tool, right? It's something like Grammarly. It's something that our students are going to be using in real life, whether we want them to or not. You know, so we need to figure out the best way to include it in their education. And as educators, we need to understand like what we're working with, so we can prepare those students when they leave college or even high school, and go out into the world where they're going to have access to these tools.
Yeah,
It's kind
true.
of it's kind of like, the cash register or the calculator. I remember when I was in school, if you had a calculator in your hand, you were going to get in trouble because that was like a tool you could not use, that you were cheating. Now, like, you give someone $10 at the register and you should be getting $7 in change, and they can't figure it out without the cash register.
It's true.
But in another couple of years, we're not going to have cash at all. Probably it's all going to be digital, so they're not going to worry about that.
Yeah, I started to when I go to the grocery stores and come at the register, and I always try to be very friendly because I think it's not always a nice job to be on the other side of a register. You have
Yeah,
grumpy customers and whatever, but so I'm the one that's going with a smile and saying good morning or good
right.
afternoon, and then they scan the stuff, and we have this. I don't know if you guys have this. It's called Aldi, which is one of the sort of
Yep.
and they're like high speed
Yeah.
beepers. That's one of the jokes. Is
Oh
but
my
I
God. Yeah,
usually
they're
go through the shop
fast.
with a little bit slower,
Yeah.
and then I take my time and say hello and this and that. And then I always say I pay with plastic. I don't pay with money. I pay with plastic.
Mhm.
And the joke is kind of gone into it's a self-fulfilling story or something that started to exist. And where I go regularly, they always smile when they see me, and plastic.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
it's like, yeah, it's different. I had €100 bill given to me recently, and
Mhm.
I think I haven't had that in my hands for more than 5 years or something. you know
Mhm.
10 or 20 or 50, yeah, but 100 is like, is this
Yeah.
real? Did I need to
Yeah.
scan this? Or and then I have these fake €500 bills that I use for training about money mindset.
Mhm.
um, and it's astonishing what money still does when you throw it on the table. But
Mhm.
when you throw a credit card or something on the table, apparently it opens up even wider range of possibilities. Well, I'm like, this is plastic. Money, it's a
Yeah.
strange concept. But yeah, and when you're talking about all these different companies and the wide range of applications that you guys are working with, um, so I can imagine that there's a part of the leadership within those companies who are kind of struggling on how can we use this data to make more profit or more
Mhm.
efficiency and stuff like that. Now, in the recent couple of weeks, what I've been reading up on, and I use AI very extensively, and I answered somebody today on a post about it who was saying, yeah, watch out, within a couple of years it's going to appear and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, guys, we're using it right now. It was
Right.
about small businesses and small business owners, and then right next to that about everyday employees who are doing these basic tasks in companies that might be replaced by AI and so on. And I said, well, there's a very big positive note. When that is the reality, I see all these people turning into freelancers and starting to do the thing that they really want to,
Mhm.
because they're forced to do something else as well, which just could be a positive twist. Because like you said, the calculator, like I don't know, maybe 70 or 80 years ago, it's something that was very exceptional if somebody would have that.
Right.
These days we have like the biggest calculator in our hands that
Right.
used to be like an office building, if you would
Yeah.
compare it in that time. And what I'm wondering is, when you look at data, um, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, data was just data. You had the terminology of big data,
Mhm.
and all that. How did you experience like the last couple of years with regards to data, and now this hype? Of course, AI exists a lot longer, but how do you see it happen, and what do you see coming up? Because a lot of my listeners are business owners and high
Mhm.
level and leadership, and they probably are thinking like, what are these guys talking about? I need to get somebody on this
Yeah.
if they haven't already. Yeah.
Yeah, well, data is power, right?
Yeah,
Like,
defend yourself is the
honestly,
last word.
everything that you collect on your customers, everything you collect about, your daily processes, all your transactions are potential data mines, right? Like things that you can get information from to figure out your next steps. And over the years, I've only been like touching on this field for the last couple of years. Um, and I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a data analyst, but I work with very, very smart people that do that. And it's amazing what you can do with the data that you have. You'd be extremely surprised because there's a lot of open source data that you can correlate that with and find out other things. So I think the possibilities are, like, not to be all cliche, like I said, data is power, and now the possibilities are endless, but they truly are, because you can take the data that you have and, again, like, try to look at, like, what is the best way, for you to be more efficient. When you're looking at customer data, what are the things that are very similar from the customer A to customer B? And, like, your best clients, what do they have in common? You might know that from your head from dealing with them and working with them and having the phone conversations, but you might not see that there's a similar geography. There's a similar, maybe employee like matrix around who they employ, or they have similar needs, right? And you might find some trends with those companies that are your big customers, and that will help you make a better decision on who to market to and who to reach out to for your future customers. And going back to, like, some of that the data that you can get in open source, that if you, like, we have farmers that are looking at the way their cows behave, right? And, like, the temperature is being measured, like this one project we're doing. And from that temperature, they can figure out when the cow is sick, when the cow is in heat, when the cow is going to give birth, how much the cow is drinking, how much the cow is eating, like all of these different things based on one measurement, and thinking critically about how to utilize that measurement. I never would ever think of a way to, like, how just from temperature can you get, like, how much a cow drank, right? Well, when this sensor is in their stomach, and when the water goes in, it cools down, right? And then over time, there is a definite timeline for that temperature to come back up to normal in the stomach. So that's how they're able to kind of measure that. I never would have thought that. And that's why we have the brilliant data scientists and analysts that are coming in and potentially helping your companies. So that's what I try to do. Like, I have a company that goes, hey, we have this data, we have this issue that we're trying to figure out how to, like, whether it be we need more customers, or we need to save money on energy usage, or whatever it may be. And I find students or even researchers that might be able to help with that kind of problem. Yeah. So there's a lot that can be done with data.
Yeah. I remember when I was with IBM, and this is like 4.5 years ago. I saw a short movie about crop analytics. It was recorded in the US, where they were using our good old friend Watson, and it was kind of mind-boggling at the time. For us now, it's like, okay, this is something that is normal between brackets, but they had these drones fly over, and then they analyzed the color of the foliage of the plants. I think it was a vineyard. And they looked at the coloring of the plants, and then they knew where either there was an infestation or something, or drought, or not enough water in the ground, stuff like. And at the time, I was like, wow, this is really going places, and very interesting, of course. And I would have thought that it would have taken quite a time to come to the point that this might be commercialized. But like you say, if you have a customer, right, or a company, I'm not going to say a customer, a company who says, we are analyzing, or we're detecting a lot of stuff, and we're just dumping it into databases. And if you have these services where you can actually help them, and then at the same time, of course, do the research and find new possibilities with this data, and evolve into an even better understanding of how the world works, because that's usually what science and data combines and goes on into. I think we're going to go at a point where we could just walk into any place, and like the example you give about the cows, that maybe we wear a wristband. I'm pointing. I'm picking up my cell phone, as in, yeah,
You're
yeah,
already wearing it.
yeah. You're already tagged. Tagged.
They're collecting data. I mean, like, whether like I guarantee they're collecting data even without your consent.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Mm.
these third party apps but let you finish your thought. So you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking about. Like, everything's being registered, and I do know that a lot of people might look at this as something of manipulation or danger, or whatever it might be. But to my mind, I'm a very positive thinker, so I see merit in everything that is being done to
Mhm.
evolve. But I can imagine as well that, so for some people it might be very scary to see these things exist. And I don't know what your view is on the danger of collecting data and
Mhm.
and and all of that beautiful stuff that is controversial to a lot of
Sure.
conversations are going on.
Yeah, so I mean, I already talked about Star Trek. Now we got to talk about Spider-Man. I mean, like, with great power, comes great responsibility, right? And I think Europe, like, is on the right path, right? Like, starting to really structure and limit how data is used, and like put specific rules into play. And
Mhm.
because the United States is, we're a little behind, but it's partly because it goes against the very nature of like what it means to be American, or the true meaning of what it means to be the land of the free, right? And so, like, trying to regulate things, it kind of goes counter, to the culture, right? So, but there is, like, if you think about data, even just your personal data, like, I was holding up my arm with the iWatch, and you've got your phone, and like almost everyone has, a smartphone, and that's collecting data on you. If that gets breached, either on your person or on the company side that's handling your data because they need to confirm that you are you, there's a danger in that. And as we get more and more digital and more data being kept in different ways, the same is true of that, because AI, the aforementioned AI, is getting smarter at collecting all of those things and finding different ways to be like the human puzzle architect of data.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's a danger in everything we do. There's a danger if I go walk out that door.
Thank you for
And
saying it, because it's true. It's true. It goes that far. Yeah, absolutely. People make it
so
a little bit more dangerous than it is in reality, because it's usually the exceptions that make it pop out, as in, wow, this is gonna, whatever they make out of it.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, everything that we have now is somewhat digital, right? You're born, your social security number is stored somewhere, your birth certificate is stored somewhere, and it's all, required when you're getting licenses, and like, you get married, and all those things are becoming more digitalized, right? So, I mean, the good thing is that, like, we also have people here at our university and other companies and that are looking for ways to kind of keep that more secure, so it can't be used against you, or nefariously. So I
Yeah.
mean, it really, like, as we advance, we're going to also have to sort of find that counter intelligence, or we have to find that way to protect what we create, right? So
Yeah, I think it's the difference between a hacker and a cracker. I think the terminology is being used the other way
yeah.
around, but anyway, yeah.
Well, another guy that I had on my show had to do with cyber, protection, cybersecurity, cyber terrorism, and things like that. And it's pretty recent that they started teaching students how to hack. And the whole premise behind that is that, like, how can you defend against something that you don't fully understand, right? So in a way, they teach you how to break the system, with penetration labs and things like that, in order to better defend it, right? And to kind of think ahead of the criminal, you know and so those things are super important as well. It's just like, again, like, as you're developing technology, you need to really understand its implications in society, and then, like, what are some of the safeguards that we can put into play. um, some of the big mega CEOs of social media and other companies that are like going, wait a second, let's stop developing AI. Let's just put a big halt on this. The cat's already out of the bag.
Yeah.
And part of me is feeling, well, they're still going to do it, even if they don't want others to do it. They just want to have the edge, right? Because there's, money to be made in that. But again, like they're all also trying to figure out how can we keep this, safe. And if somebody wants to be, has evil intent, they're going to try to find a way, right? And it's just our responsibility to kind of do our best to prevent that. The one thing that most I guess we can't sort of, we can maybe curb, but we can't change is what the human intent and will, right? Like we're not going to be able to block someone's will all the way, all the time, whether positive or negative.
True. That's true. And in the end, when I have these conversations with people who are scared is a bit word, but apprehensive with all these new technologies, and I'm not only talking about my own parents who are kind of a completely different generation. When my mom got a cell phone, is like a smartphone, she was like, yeah, I need to learn this, I need to know this, and this thing is on their mantle all the time, so she's not even using it, but because she's not sure of if she can push the wrong button or whatever. But if I have these conversations, I also try to emphasize on the fact of the advantages that all this technology also brings, because if we look at data that's being analyzed by and it's not especially by AI, but just by computer systems and software in general, like for instance for surgery that has to be done on somebody, and it has to be done in a very specific, minute way where even a surgeon does not have the capabilities to do it. These things can save lives and can make other things possible, like I don't know, optimize certain systems as well that bring an advantage. And I'd rather look at that part of the story than only about negative thing. But the protection is needed. I think it kind of reminds me of Robert Greene's book, The Laws of Human Nature, where his intent is not to learn you how to understand human nature and then use that as a manipulation technique. No, it's a book about how you can learn to protect yourself on these things, and that's one of the things that I want to especially bring awareness to leaders, is that it's technology, it's out there. Learn to use it, learn to understand it, and if you don't use it, that's fine, but just understand what it's about, because your customer is going to use it, your competition is going to use it. So many people out there, and we're human beings, and when it makes life easier, we will use it. Like the guy who invented the remote control, he was a lazy guy, and he invented the remote control, so he didn't have to get out of the chair. And everybody's using it these days.
There's a great Simpsons clip with Homer Simpson laying on a couch and going. He wants to reach the remote control, and it's just out of his reach. It's just, you can't reach remote control. This is so boring. He's so bored with the show, and then finally he just gives up, and he goes, it's not so bad. Just watched it, And that's what, the reason I say that is that's what you want as a company or a person that's emerging, dealing with emerging technology, not to be. Don't just go, oh, it's not so bad. Because you know what? You're falling further behind in the tech. You're falling further. And if you don't want to figure it out, then hire somebody that will know how to do it and that can help protect you from and your company from these things. You're absolutely right. You should understand what it is. You may not want to use it. And I would argue that a lot of this tech you're gonna want to use to stay ahead of the curve. And it's like teaching. Teachers don't get paid enough at all. But there's this common misconception that the summer comes and you've got it off. You've got the best job ever. Well, my wife's a teacher. She works most of the summer. She's in sessions learning how to better teach her students, right? There's staff development. And the same thing goes for business with all these new technology comes out. Same thing goes with doctors. You mentioned doctors. They're not just, this is how we did it in medical school in 1950, and this is how I'm going to keep on doing it, right? Because be cutting off an arm when they could, like, repair it with microsurgery. So all of these things are important to kind of stay educated and learn about, so that you can make an educated decision. It's data, but in human form, right?
Yeah.
That's what learning is. It's like, what you have in your mind and what you're developing over time, and you're keeping in your safe up here in your head. It's important for the decisions that you're going to make in the future. And um, you talk about to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they don't know it all. Like,
No.
sometimes they're the idea person, right? They're the concept person, or maybe they're really good with the finances, or maybe they're just really good at pitching and making connections. But very rare do you have, the scientist who can develop the code, the financial guy, the person that can talk to everyone and do business pitches, find the investors, and the one that can, like, do HR. Right. So, like, you have to hire the people to kind of complement the skills that maybe either you don't want to do, or you're a little weak in. And that's the kind of things that will make your business better and stronger over time.
Yeah, indeed, and I understand what you mean. I've leveled up my own business a couple of months back, where at one point I went to a high-end coaching program, and because I was feeling like I'm kind of stuck, what's this problem and this and that, and it came down to the fact to learn to delegate.
Yep.
I've been working alone for 4 years, and I've been very successful in what I did. I have a very broad knowledge. I can go from podcast editing to running a competence and training story in a nuclear power plant. These are very big things that are kind of out of there,
Yeah.
And I have a 15 head team within my freelance story, but as my own. Within my own company, I also have 10 people that work for me. They're freelancers who work for me, and I've noticed that I used to be the one that making a website. Okay, I'll just do that myself because it costs money, and that's the idea the whole time. But the amount of time I spend on creating that website, learning how to do it, blah blah blah. In that time, I could be servicing my customers. I could be checking out and going to network events and blah blah. What I've done now is I delegated to this design person who makes websites, and I was actually astonished that where the ratio hourly rate and time that I don't have to spend on it, and especially energy that I save for myself, gives me a lot more options by going to other things that I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And that's important as a business, that you understand that give the stuff that you don't do to the expert, to the guy, or in your case, university or department within a university or whatever, who has the opportunity. And you mentioned earlier that you guys have a very big computer, so the stuff is there, and a lot of companies think like, oh, we need to invest like megatons of money to get the right stuff in, the right people in, blah blah, and then they end up with a very big hole in their bank account and not even sure if they've got everything that they need, while the experts have everything ready to go and use, and they have the experience with other customers. So it comes down to researching. You have to research what your issue is X, and you have to research what do I need around me that can solve this problem, and who has the experience with this problem, and then go from there. And that's where good leadership comes from. Don't solve it yourself, because you don't know everything. You actually, what I tell my team sometimes, and they really have to laugh each time I say this: I'm the dumbest person in the whole room. I'm their manager, blah blah blah. I'm the dumbest person. You guys are the experts. I got this problem. What would you do? And I know some stuff. Yes, of course I know stuff, because but it has a dual side to it, because I empower people to use their expertise, and they feel like they have something to contribute. Well, they don't really feel it, but they actually do. And the benefits of these kind of things are so wide that you have a team that's motivated, because you're the one asking them for help. And what do people love? Well, first, they love talking about themselves, and on the other side, they love helping people. So when I do this, I see these evolutions going so much quicker than if I do it alone. And that's where we come back to all these tools that are out there. Why not ask? I think it was I had to calculate. I'm putting a small roof here next to the house.
Mhm.
I need to calculate the descent grading. I
Yep.
was like, wow, calculus. That's been a couple of years. So I just went on ChatGPT. I said, these are the dimensions I have right now. What's the ideal inclinage that I have to create for water to slide
Mhm.
off? I got a clear answer. It
Right.
even explained to me once again what calculus system and all those wonderful things I needed.
Sure.
I didn't really intend to get all that information, but my kids were really close to me. I said, look, this is what this thing is answering me.
Yeah.
And that's where I also ask questions about. I mentioned in my intro that I help people find for more fulfillment.
Mhm.
And I was having a chat with, I use the voice chat with ChatGPT sometimes. She's a little bit quick to answer, but anyway. So I asked a couple of questions. So, what's fulfillment?
Mhm.
How can you define it? Search on the internet about it, blah, blah, blah. And you get different perspectives. It's not that you're getting the ideal answers,
Yeah.
but you're getting different perspectives. And I think that's something as well that your data brings.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's really important.
Yeah, it depends on what data is in that language model, right? So, like, if ChatGPT 4 doesn't have architect or basic building principles in there, you might be getting a roof that is like on a 2-degree angle and like
Well,
has a big hole in the middle because I don't know. It like
mhm,
I was trying to envision a really cool thing to say, like it's an isosceles triangle or something, but like it's important that you double check AI at this point, right?
mhm,
For most situations, right? But there's different algorithms and the things that, like a lot of the students that are doing presentations right now on the work that they did for the company partnerships that we have, are talking about their success rate and their percent of success, right? And how often the model is correct, but they're doing the work going back manually and taking a look at least at a sample of the data and their answers and their results to say, okay, is this doing what we want it to do? And like any computer program and even like student, right,
mhm.
there are small mistakes that might happen in the code or something that will have huge effects on the outcome. So identifying what that mistake might be or whatever, um, by going back and checking your work. And I think that kind of goes back to that whole like calculator thing about long division. They made you want it, like that was their answer to show your work, right, to the calculator problem, to make sure you're not just using a calculator, right? Now we have calculators that will literally like take a picture of the thing and show the work, just like you're describing.
Yeah.
And all those things are like great tools, but they have potential just like any human, because it's a model that's built on data that is provided by humans, for a mistake to happen. So like not trusting and going in blindly and using it as a guide is just as important as like taking basic protections around your data and who you give your social security number to and all that other stuff, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I totally agree with the sentiment that you're expressing about you know um, it needs to be used as a tool and in the right way. And then also, I have a business that, I run on the side, and I took on a co-host because I'm like, I can't do it all.
Hmm.
And it's been a challenge in a number of ways, in a good way. But it's also been very great to have someone else to like, hey, what do you think of this, this title or this idea? And I get feedback, you
Yeah.
know, I get feedback about things that I don't want feedback about, but
Mhm.
that's cool too,
Yeah.
because I never would have thought of some of the things that she throws out there. So the strength of your team, the people that you hire around you, shouldn't all be your buddies, right? They shouldn't all be thinking in the same way that you think, so that your business is stronger, and give them that opportunity to shine and to use their expertise. And I've run internship programs, and some of the faculty and staff that I've worked with can't believe the amount of stuff that I will allow a student to do, especially 10 years ago. Because they're like, oh, you let a student do that? I'm like, yeah. they need the opportunity to kind of learn, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're here at a university, is to kind of figure out how they can do it themselves. That whole, teach a man to fish mentality, or a woman to fish, or
Mhm.
they to fish, or whatever, we're going by these days. But like, it's important to give everyone the opportunity to be successful and to do just what you said, like
Mm.
be able to delegate. And for some of us, like, especially, it seems like entrepreneurs and CEOs, like delegating, like, is not always something they want to do, especially in the beginning. They're afraid that it's just not going to get done right.
Yeah. Yeah. I can do it better.
Yeah, I could do it better. And you probably, there's a guy that I think we know mutually, Ben Albert.
Yeah.
And I think I've shared this before. There have been times where I've sent him work that I said, "Hey, can you do this?" And he's like, "I could, but you know who could do it even better? This person."
Mm.
So he's turning away business, and not in a bad way. He's just saying, "I could do this. I can do a good job with it. I know I can, but you know what? This is this person's field of expertise, and he wants to kind of pay it forward, and that's the kind of person he is.
Yeah.
And we need more Ben Alberts in the world,
True.
honestly, to be more successful, because they're going to give it to you straight.
Mhm.
And he'd be the perfect CEO. Let's hire him.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. I think Ben connected us as well, so
Yeah,
shout out to Ben.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think the last couple of episodes I've been shouting out to Ben the whole
Oh,
time
I
because
know.
he's
This is
been
going to
thinking
become the
about
Ben
this.
show. He's got enough.
Yes,
He's got enough
like an
podcasts on his
extension on
plate.
his own.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he's doing great stuff on his show
yeah,
as well. So
yeah.
talking about shows, that sounds terrific.
Mhm.
It sounds like a terrific title,
Yeah,
pun intended. But but you got two stories going on.
yeah.
You got sounds terrific. That sounds terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Tell us about your side story there, because I think it's a very interesting concept what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. So I had, during the pandemic, I basically knew that I was losing my position. The writing was on the wall, and I was sort of done. Like, I'm never gonna work in education again. I remember saying that. I'm like, I'm just done, you know, because kind of going like to what I do now. It's super cool, because education, especially higher education in America, tends to run at a very slow pace, and then business runs at a very fast pace, and too fast sometimes. They just want to like make money, and let's like not worry so much about data and the decisions. Let's just do this. It'll make money. It worked in the past. When you marry those two together and they partner, they slow down. Like, one speeds up and one slows down.
Mhm.
And it's an interesting concept. So anyways, I was convinced, I'm like done with higher education, and I needed a way to get in front of some nonprofit leaders, because I'm like, the next best thing is like, how can I want to do work that's impactful. I liked working with students, because every now and then you get that student that would kind of say, "Hey, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for what you did for me." And that's just a great feeling to have. So like, nonprofit work was kind of also in my blood, and I had volunteered with a number of organizations. But what I was finding was, I'm a great volunteer, and they don't want to lose great volunteers, so they're not going to hire you, because they'd rather have you as a volunteer.
Okay.
That's not always the case, but it just happens often. So anyways, I'm like, how am I going to get in front of these nonprofit leaders? It's the middle of a pandemic. You can't go out, can't talk, you can't network in the traditional way. So I was talking to a friend and colleague of mine. He's like, you just got to start a movement or something. And I'm like, okay. And I went back to college, where, I was helping friends out on the radio. And I'm like, you know what? I can do a podcast. I can feature people that are doing really great things, and kind of talk about what they do. And then I'm also getting kind of my name out there at the same time. Right. And so other people that might be wanting to help with that organization, or wanting to do something similar in their own lives, would benefit from listening and learning how it's done. And a lot of the show had to do with, all right, now it's COVID. How do you pivot? How are you doing this? So it was, there was functional help with that part of it, the pandemic part. As we slowly came out of that, that became less and less of a topic on the show. Sometimes we reflect on it, sometimes we don't. So that was kind of how That Sounds Terrific was born. And, it's just a great opportunity to uplift people that are doing positive things in their community. Started with like nonprofits and, more the do-gooders, but I've also featured wealth managers and, full out businesses, based on like the work either that they do in a unique way, or on something they do on the side and they're able to do because of their business. So that's how That Sounds Terrific started.
Nice. Nice.
And then, I mean, That Sounds Terrifying kind of, I do improv, and I have a series of friends that I kind of meet with before we practice and rehearse, and got to talking to one of them about scary things that have happened. And I don't even know how we got to that. There's one of our episodes where we talk about how everything came to be. And anyways, like after hearing her stories and things, I'm like, hey, this sounds like a really cool podcast. I've been looking to do another one, and maybe with a co-host. And that's how That Sounds Terrifying was born, because we feature ghost stories and paranormal happenings, and we talk about those things. And in a way, it's also trying to help people that might like think they're alone, in those feelings and having those experiences. And so there's a little bit of that too. But a lot of it's just around telling stories and kind of exploring the unknown, So
Well, I find it fascinating. Sorry for interrupting you,
no,
but
go ahead.
I find it in fascinating. I see a correlation in what I do as well. What you were saying, people feeling alone.
Mhm.
It doesn't actually matter what you experienced. If for instance we're talking, I was thinking about it just a second ago, because we've had a conversation about what you do on that podcast before. I was thinking, imagine something dropping out of my closet right there, right behind me at some point during our conversation. We would both like, what just happened here? And nobody would, unless they saw it. And even then, these days on socials, you see so many movies created, and they're always in bad quality. I don't get it. It's never like HD 4K. No, it's like very bad quality.
It's grainy and blurry and dark. And like right now, like the power will go out again for me, and all of a sudden the door will open behind you, and it'll be grainy for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I hear the song Thriller starting right now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I've had some friends as well experiencing really strange things. I'm going to generalize, just strange things that you're not able to explain, period. And they were like, I'm afraid to tell somebody. I don't know what kind of reaction these people are going to give, or et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, why are you so afraid to just tell a story, and maybe just tell it as a story of an experience that you had? I've had a situation where I was walking in a small forest where I used to live, and I had the continuous feeling that somebody was watching me. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's maybe your human automatic protective system upstairs that are thinking a beep beep beep, radar running around and saying whatever. But
it could have been a bear. You could have just feeling like, you have something, and all of a sudden there's some predator that's actually stalking you, and your spidey sense is telling you, hey, there's something stalking me, but you just don't see it.
Absolutely.
Or it could be paranormal. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, we have three options on our show, and we have three options where you can come on the show, just like we're doing now, and talk and tell your story. We also have had someone come on the show that was, I think, in law enforcement, if I recall correctly, and we sort of made, it's not even really him, but we used a silhouette, kind of a person moving, to kind of show a visualization, and then he just spoke. And then of course you could just submit your story, and we can reread it, or have a reader come on and tell the story. So we try to eliminate that, because it's that sort of like taboo kind of feeling, like people like we go back and forth on whether or not we want to share that show on LinkedIn. Like sometimes we do, like I usually drop an episode and I'll share that, but I don't share like all the socials that we share elsewhere. And it's because it's more of a professional networking service. But hey, like our new show that's dropping this week has to do with stuff that's happened in someone's office. So I'm like, it's happening at work too. So like, we talk about our own feelings and our own thoughts and what things could be. And, I go back and forth, honestly. We just sort of like, at some point got to accept who we are, and then like other people are interested enough that we're not getting completely like, you know, kicked off of LinkedIn or something like that.
Well, yeah, I think there's always there's always somebody who's prepared to listen to these things out of curiosity, or it does
Sure.
always attract people who are naysayers or very
Yeah.
skeptical, which is okay because you need skeptics to emphasize something sometimes and make you clear, and put both feet back on the ground because it's
Mhm.
necessary as a human. I love the saying. Let me remember it so I can say it correctly. And I've mentioned before in my podcast is we are we're not human beings experience a spiritual moment. We are spiritual beings experiencing a human existence.
Sure.
And I profoundly believe that because there's some things that we cannot explain. And
Mhm.
I find it's always funny when I talk to, these scientists who are saying, but you have to see it before you believe it and all that
Yeah.
wonderful stuff. And I'm like, what's the visual spectrum or the auditive spectrum of a human being? And then
Mhm.
you get these science numbers and whatever. And I'm like, what's out there? What's outside of that spectrum? You see a cat walking
Yeah.
into a room, they see a hell of a lot more color
Mhm.
nuances than we do.
Yeah.
So how can you just block off something that somebody's experienced or saw as something that's irrelevant? So
Sure.
I find that these things should be brought out into the open and discussed. I'm not gonna say we have to create it as being how to say this with some politically correct words. Um, Something that is hyped up for not what it is,
Yeah.
attention tracking or stuff like that.
Fake
It's just a story,
news.
and think about it. It's kind of that way.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is also to remember whether, we talk a little bit about this on the show, like whether it's paranormal or if it's, explainable, right? If there's something reasonable. Like you talked about scientists like want to prove that the thing, like they also want it to happen again. Like, okay, like when you think about experiments are only really successful in conclusions when you like are able to replicate.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things, like, don't replicate like right in a row. Like you can't like reproduce the same conditions and then like the ghost has come up again and the ghost will come up again and so but there is an explanation for something, whether it's in the person's mind, if it's in like what's that when everyone freaks out, mass hysteria, if it's
Yeah.
that kind of thing, if it's in everyone's mind, or if it's produced by some sort of natural occurrence because of whatever, there's
Mhm.
an explanation, and that's what we're trying to get at, like
Yeah.
eventually. I mean, we're just telling creepy stories honestly to be creeped out and they like talk about how creepy it is and things like that, but in the
Mhm.
end a lot of the paranormal investigators just want to understand, is this the fourth dimension? Is this science, like
Yeah.
energy? um you know is it like we hear time travel, all these
Yeah.
different things like the
Indeed.
Philadelphia experiment. you know
Mhm.
what what is happening? There's enough people out there experiencing these things to say something's happening. We just don't have the cause or the root, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in any case, I love what you're doing with that because I think it's something that just needs to be discussed. And like you said, you discuss it, and on the other hand, what you're doing with that sounds terrific is also something that's pretty interesting
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And I think if some of the listeners might be interested to come on that podcast, they just should contact you. And
Yeah.
that's a question I want to ask you. So, what do people one they can talk to you about podcasting, but
Yeah.
what else can they talk to you about, and where can they find you? I think it's very interesting that they should be able to connect.
Yeah, well, I'm all over, the socials and stuff like that. With the podcast, it's just, thatsoundsterrific.com or thatsoundsterrifying.com. They both go to the same place. But I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me just by searching my name, Nick Koziol. And my email, like my basic email is KOZIOLN@gmail.com. I'm sure we'll have that all in the show notes too, but you can
Yes.
find us just by searching That Sounds Terrific, That Sounds Terrifying. Always looking for guests, always looking for stories, uplifting moments and things that are positive in the community for That Sounds Terrific. And then the terrifying side is sort of obvious stories and scary moments. And I can help with, connecting you with other people, and your data can help both your company or organization, and then a student or multiple students. And all of our partnerships, I didn't really mention this, but they're all free. So like we don't, like some colleges have senior projects and you got to put $10,000 down to be considered. That's not the case here. In the capstone course, where you have a group of students working on your data science challenge, it's a semester long activity that is free for really any company or organization in the entire world. Some of the COE stuff, like the internship things and stuff that I discussed earlier, are a little bit more New York centered just because of our funding. But there are a number of ways that I can still help with your data challenges. So
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Great.
So I just love meeting people. I loved meeting you. I appreciate you calling me out to have me on a show, and it's interesting being on the other side of the mic. So
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So people just want to connect, please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you and kind of figure out how we might be able to mutually partner or benefit from speaking in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, Nick. And we got to our show with all the stuff being done right before that. So thank you very much, and I want to thank the listener as well for listening again to a wonderful conversation. And find Nick online. I would think, just don't think about it, just connect with the guy, because he's amazing what he's doing, and these things should be done. It should be done. Just connect.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
And thank you, Nico. I just got to thank you for one more time. And people should reach out to you and kind of tell them what, they want to hear more. And because you're a great guy, and I really enjoyed learning from you. And you've got a great podcast here that provides a lot of knowledge to people. So you're doing wonderful things yourself.
Thank you very much. I openly and widely collect that compliment. Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we will all hear you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Everlasting Podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments, or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.